agenda items, and we had a discussion via email, and there were not any specific issues that he had any concerns about. So he's fine with us just moving forward. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the meeting, and anybody else who joins in, and those that help set up all the information for this meeting. I know that our personal lives are somewhat upside down, and our work and professional lives are upside down. And I know the town activity is upside down, so it can be quite a task to put this together, even though it's only a few hours. It's a difficult time to do this, but it also, I think, makes life be a little bit normal, and we have some work to do. So I want to thank them, and also, our town volunteers and first responders, everywhere. People are really chipping in, whether it's Lampman's or any of the pharmacy I went today, and they're doing a heck of a job to make everyone safe and help us in our town. So as far as the meeting additions and deletions and public comment, I guess I'll ask if there's anyone on who wants to make a public comment. Don't think so. So there's a couple of slight adjustments to the agenda we'd like to make. Item 3 is an update on the COVID-19 for the town. We're hoping to have Al in on this, Al Barber. And item 7 is our annual approval of the local emergency management plan. That's something every town is doing, so it happens to be tonight. So we'll move item 7 right after item 3, so make it item 3A. And then there was one other one. We'll have a discussion about what in the town offices we might consider to be essential work, and what work we think can be might be considered non-essential, and therefore we don't necessarily need the usual activity at town hall. Is that a fair way to state that, Renee?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we can do that maybe just before the town administrative report. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
All right. So first is just an update. We asked Al if he'd be willing to give us an update, and certainly Renee could give us an update on the COVID-19 response efforts in Hinesburg.
Sure.
All right, Al, you're here. Right.
I am here. Happy to. I'm there in spirit. So things are going well as far as responses. I think we potentially have one case that I'm aware of, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's been pretty stable. I think everybody's respecting all the governor's mandates and requests, and I think as long as we keep doing that, I think we're going to be in good shape. I know there's been a lot of conversation, obviously, out there about needing supplies. We are in good shape as far as supplies go. I've gotten one delivery from the national stockpile and expect another one tomorrow. So as far as that part goes, we're in very good shape. Luckily, we've had to obviously change the way we respond to every call. The mandate has come out now that there is no call that's an emergency. And the reason why they say that is because it takes time to put on your protective equipment. So everyone, we use full tie-back suits, face shields, N95, rubber glove, boots, hoods, the whole ensemble. And it's really to protect ourselves and make sure we don't get sick, but also make sure we don't spread it also. So,
The folks?
yeah. Well, so what, typically the process on evening calls, we might have, depending upon the call, typically we always planned on having 3 people, minimum of 2. And now what we're trying to do is limit it to 2 people. If the call, if more assistance is needed, everybody's listening anyways. So basically we have an interior, both people dress up. One person goes in and makes patient contact. The other person stays outside and will bring in the equipment as needed. So it changed what we did a little bit. Typically, depending upon the call, we might have 4 people, if it was kind of serious. And, probably one of the reasons why we've changed that is just simply the equipment and making sure we don't burn through, the equipment too fast. But, as far as the equipment goes, we're in very good shape.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Al on, how things are going, or Renee, because Renee obviously is working.
Yeah, and I can't really speak to, this is kind of the emergency side of it. And, I know Renee we've kind of been working with some others to, handle the community needs. So I'm not much in the loop on the community needs. So maybe she can give a report, or Jeff, maybe you can get some insight.
You're on mute, Renee.
As far as the community efforts, I mean, obviously, we're seeing a lot that's happening already on Front Porch Forum and a lot of wonderful, kind gestures. The more coordinated effort that we've been trying to move forward is just the different existing organizations that are already in place, like Hinesburg Community Resource Center, Age Well, the church and schools, and trying to we have the Google form that we've referenced that someone from the department has created. That's has two different options where you can, if you want to help, then you hit that button and it gives a whole host of different options and ways to help in the community. And then there's another one that I need help, and then a list of ways that they might need help. So the person that receives that Google form would then direct them to the appropriate resource that's already in place. And then we also have a virtual mailbox established through the town that we currently have two of the board members, Marilee and Jeff, have offered, Marilee and Mike have offered to be those point people. And so when someone calls that number, they'll leave a message and saying if they, what it is that they need, if they need help with something. We also, Lampman's reached out, they need help for people to be shoppers and then deliver. They used to do a delivery service, but right now they need all hands on deck with their staff to get the shelves stocked and work there. So that was one community need that we're trying to meet. And so we have a couple people that we've already tasked to be that shopper person that would go, they'd receive that list that either comes in on the Google form or comes in on the phone voicemail message. They would contact, we have contact at Lampman's to make sure those items are, they still have. There would be $100 limit per shopping trip. And the shopper would come to Lampman's, pick up the items. They would have made contact with the resident that needs them and set a time to deliver them to the doorstep. There would be no contact. They would go back out to their vehicle. The resident would leave the payment in an envelope that the person would take safely and bring it back to Lampman's on their next trip. So those things we're hoping to get started soon. We are looking for some volunteers that would be willing to be those shoppers. I think right now we want to start with a smaller group of maybe 4 to 6 people. And so what I'd ask each board member if they could, make a recommendation of 1 or 2 people just to get it started while we're working the tweaks out. Make sure we have a good system in place. And then as the needs grow within the community, there may be other places that we need to pick up items from or assist people with.
Okay, that sounds like, could be quite a need for folks that, might be compromised and therefore going to a public place like Lampman's, although they're trying to do a very good job there, and I think they are.
Right.
That's a high risk area. I happened to see a computer modeling speech or talk, and it modeled all the different behaviors, and one that they showed, people staying home, but then everybody in town going to the same place to shop.
Right.
And when you turn that on, it does spread, and then therefore, if at that shop they add additional controls or reduce the amount of people going there, it does help. So that could be, an important resource to help reduce the spread and to help folks who might be challenged to get to Lampman's at a safe time, I guess.
Right.
All right. Any other questions on sort of where we are with COVID-19? All right. The next item is.
I just want to make a statement. I just really want to thank Al for the updates every day. It's really helpful. A little frightening, but very helpful. So thank you very much, Al.
You're welcome. Hopefully they keep you in the loop. Yeah.
Yeah, a little too much, but I appreciate it.
You know, and anybody in the listening audience, you know, you can go to the Vermont Department of Health website, the CDC website, any of the, really, you go to the vermont.gov, and there's all kinds of good information there. So, you know, certainly use that for a resource. You know, it's there and it's good and accurate. So, and I also would caution everybody, you know, make sure the source of your information, you know, that's why I kind of like to have people head towards that vermont.gov site, because it's, you know, it's factual information, you know, it best knowledge at the time it's written. So, you know, be consistent in using your source and know it's trusted.
We
That's
do
good.
have those resources up on the town website as well.
So that's good. You know, that was suggested, I think, Jeff, you brought up, you know, a couple weeks ago or so, saying, you know, can we get more information on the website? So thanks, Renee, for doing that. That does provide, you know, a lot there.
So Phil, am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Yes.
Yeah. Phil, I had a question about these volunteers, especially from the survey that you said. Would we then be putting people in a high-risk situation if they're continually going into Lampman's and buying groceries for other people? Or are they just delivering?
No, I think maybe Renee, I don't want to
Yeah.
misspeak, but I think the idea was, you know, I don't think anybody would be doing this 10 times a week. They might do it once or twice. And they would be doing the shopping, I assume, and run it through the cash register like you would for your own groceries, and then drop it off at the person's house, outside the house, not make contact with the household.
Right. So that was the request or the need from Lampman's is assistance with that piece. So going and being the shopper, shopping for the groceries, again, they would limit it to $100. So it's a small shopping trip at each time. The volunteer wouldn't have to pay for the groceries. They would be on an account, and then they would reimburse with the person that they deliver it to. They would bring the payment back to Lampman's.
And Renee, I thought about this earlier today after our conversations, and I'm wondering if there's any chance Lampman's could provide like a specific half an hour or a time frame that the volunteer could go in, or maybe allow them to go in during that senior citizen time or whatever, where there's the least amount of people in the store, so we're not, you know, creating undue exposure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mike, I can check in with Lampman's and see if there's another time, maybe not at the senior citizen time, but maybe shortly right after, or sometime that they could reserve for that.
That's a good
Thank you.
idea.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So if we wanted to recommend people to take on this volunteer job, it would be people that are not, what, 65 or over?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, looking for people, again, like Renee said, keeping it to a very small number. You know, I hate to use the words trustworthy and whatnot, but certainly trustworthy, and maybe even known to the community, because they will be working with vulnerable populations.
And the recipient would pay by check, because we're not supposed to use cash, right?
That would be the requested payment would be check.
Okay.
So it sounds like it's a good idea. I mean, there's, it's still being worked out.
Right.
But it sounds like it's a need that's there today and not met by other groups like Hinesburg Community Resource Center, or certainly we don't want our emergency response group to be tied up trying to deliver groceries. But I could see, for some elderly folks, or some folks that might have a disability and therefore hard to get in and out. I know when I go to Lampman's, I don't, spend much time. I get what I want and I'm out of there, and being very careful. It might be hard for some folks to be able to do that. So we'll hope to hear more on that. And I heard Renee say, as select board members, do we know anybody in the town who might fit that bill and be willing to do that? We could talk to them anyways and point them in that direction. Okay, so the next item is item 7, and that's the local emergency management plan. That's something that's done every year. Maybe Al, you could just, tell us who uses
Sure.
it, I guess, and give us a...
Yeah, right. So I guess the overarching view of it is it's a resource really for use within the community for department heads, emergency responders. The state of Vermont basically collects that information via Regional Planning Commission, and they house the information. They probably use it more than the state of Vermont because that's their contact list. So should they, have questions about something that's going on in the community, if we're having flooding, do you need assistance? It gives them a list of phone numbers to be able to call. And it also could be utilized by, say something happened in this town and the town got separated for some reason, or the responders, weren't available. The communities around us could bring that up, and they would say, oh, well, there's a daycare at this location. It's information really kind of on the spot when you need it type information. It really, truthfully, it doesn't get you, well, I shouldn't say it that way. With all the recent flooding, I mean, it gets actually probably used quite a lot more than it ever used to all the time. So it's, a lot of effect in natural disasters, and it's a document, kind of a living document every year. We need to obviously change phone numbers and re-verify the information in it. And it really gives a source for outside agencies to contact people also. So, and the one thing that we do have to do, which obviously is postponed indefinitely at this point, is get the ICS training for the new members.
Right.
402 ICS training, but we're good as long as we've got you guys that can sign it anyway. So I think that's probably, anybody have any questions about it, I guess.
And,
Hi, Al. This is Mike Lohner. Oh, go ahead.
Yep, great.
go, Mike.
In reviewing the plan earlier, I noticed that we don't have contacts for the mobile home communities, as well as Kelly's Field and Annette. Is that something we think we can get?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, truthfully, I just haven't had time to revisit all the numbers this year. So, but yeah, and there are other. I mean, I do have the contacts for Kelly Fields and all those places. Just it's not in that form right now, and we really have to go through and purge things and make sure they're current, because some of the daycares, some of the home daycares have gone, and some have sprung up, and one thing that we hopefully once we get our full-time person in July, that will be one of their main tasks, because we don't have a real good contact list for businesses. So, that's really one of the tasks that full-time fire person will be taking on once they're in place.
Great, thanks so much.
Sure.
And so there's also another piece as part of this, and I think that's where the select board might get involved in if we had to spend money in an emergency, right, Al?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it's the spending process. So in the ICS chain, you do have a financial branch, but for the financial branch to function, being the town clerk or a designated person, you guys have to approve the expenditures. So yes, that's another key role you play. And both you or the emergency manager can declare a state of emergency within the town. So if I wasn't available, you could call emergency management, and that form is, I think, included in this, the declaration of a state of emergency. So in really what that does is it puts us on the radar at emergency management for reimbursement and assistance.
Yep. Okay. All right. So unless there's any more concerns, I don't have my annotated agenda up. Do we have to approve this, Renee?
Oh, I've got mine right here.
Because we have to
Yes.
sign it. Yeah.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the 2020 Local Emergency Management Plan, LEMP, for the town of Hinesburg.
I
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, any more discussion? And Al, you have obviously a copy with your crews in the emergency group. Is there
Yep.
one in the town somewhere, Renee? Do you have a copy? Yes. Okay.
I usually try to that, and I think the police station has
Mhm.
one, or should. I have to go through and renew all these, and each one of our trucks has it on our tablets. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All those in favor of approving the LEMP for 2020, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
I think we've got them all. Jeff, did you say aye? Yeah.
I did say aye.
Okay, thanks. All right. Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Thanks for
Yeah, no problem.
thank you and your team.
Yes.
Sure, I will. Absolutely. Thanks.
Next item is discuss the revolving loan fund and how to support local businesses. Renee, do you want to jump in on this?
All right, I'll just see. I think Melissa is going to join us. Let me just see if she's here yet. Not seeing her. So the reason this is on the agenda, I've been in communication with the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, and initially to find ways to support the businesses that had applied through our Revolving Loan Fund. And so we had two applicants, or two existing business owners that did utilize this fund. And because of the current situation we are in, we wanted to find ways to support them. So we did do that. So we were able to, work with the Addison County Economic Development Corporation and get guidance from them, as well as the attorney that closed on those loans. And so for the next 3 months, we have suspended the interest and payments on those loans for those individuals. But and then to add on to that, the Revolving Loan Fund Committee wanted to see if there are other ways that they could use this fund to support our local businesses through this time. So that was why this is on the agenda, and just to sort of think about that. I did add in, just for your reference, and I wasn't sure what the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, what their thoughts were going to be, or if they had further things that they wanted to discuss with regard to this, but I did add in the actual closeout agreement, which is what this fund was developed from Vermont Smoke and Cure. And so if you look at that document, which I have labeled as 4C, I highlighted a section that really talks about what the purpose of that fund is. So it's this section here.
Yep.
And if you go down, the fund's use may include, but not be limited to, the creation or retention of jobs. So that piece right there is definitely relevant right now. Rehabilitation or creation of affordable housing, enhance public services, or provide improvements to public facilities. Primary beneficiaries will continue to be lower moderate income residents of the town of Hinesburg. So these, again, you know, if we're trying to do it, if their thought is something in response to the COVID-19, I would see the retention of jobs being a piece that stands out for this fund.
Sure.
In addition to, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I can speak to it a little bit if you want what their intention is.
Sure.
Because I reached out to the Revolving Loan Fund Committee to ask if there was any way to make the funds available to current businesses in Hinesburg that might, whether it's to help their payroll, you know, that sort of thing, to deal with current needs because of COVID. And so that they've been doing a lot of work to try to figure out what they can or how flexible it would be.
Right. I also pulled up here in this, I put on, I've sent out to businesses, the HBPA, and on our town Facebook page is a small business owner's guide to the CARES Act. And so just different resources that are available to business owners to help get them through this time too.
Okay. So just sort of, it helps me to sort of just recap. So we have that revolving loan fund that started with Vermont Smoke and Cure. And those funds they received, and I forget the total amount. Is it 60,000 total?
The total for which?
For the amount, the total amount of funds that were available for our revolving fund. So we've given out 2 at
50,000 each. 50,000 each.
50,000 each. Okay.
Yes.
And we still have another 100,000 in there, correct?
Yeah, I think we have I'd have to check with Missy and Joan, but I don't know if it's like 130,000.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
So we've had our first 2 businesses come and take advantage of it. And now Renee and others have suggested that we delay payments for 3 months, which apparently we have the ability to do. And so we're doing that. And then, as Renee's saying, look at that fund and, you know, are there ways that other businesses might take advantage of it during this time? And then along with that, there's other opportunities for local businesses, and making sure all of our local businesses understand what's available. And it sounds like the Economic Development Committee will look into seeing how it could be made available for a local business for this particular, during this particular time. Does that sound right, Renee?
Yes, I think so.
And we don't have to take any action on this, right? We've already approved to delay those payments.
Right. Yeah. No, this was more of a discussion, like what Mike initiated was just finding, maybe utilizing this fund to help other businesses in town. And so this was just sort of a discussion to think maybe outside the box of ways that we could support businesses. I think it would be good, and like I said, I reached out to the HBPA too. If they identify any needs of other businesses that maybe there's some gaps between the other resources that are available, maybe we could find out what it is that those needs are, and then better able to frame, how we can help.
I wonder if we can find ways, and maybe Mike has some ideas on this, on reaching out, because I would imagine some small businesses just they're not in the habit of asking for a loan, and they might say, well, I just can't keep going. I'm just going to have to go out of business, without realizing that the town really wants to be there and support them so that that doesn't happen. Is there any way we can be proactive with that?
I believe the thought would be, once the committee knows they can be more flexible in what that flexibility is, they'll advertise that the fund's available to current small businesses in town to seek assistance.
Okay, thank you.
And Renee has reached out to the Hinesburg Business Association so that, they're at least, and I'm sure they're having those discussions. I know my own company, 4 weeks ago, we weren't having those discussions, but we're having them now, like what's available and, how does it work? And some of those laws were just passed, so people are still trying to figure them out. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had other businesses reach out to me, or I've reached out to them as well. Just just trying to get people to spread the word to see, so we can understand what help they need and how we could help them.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Renee. Next item on the agenda is item 5, and this was put on the agenda. I don't know whose idea it was. I think Renee contacted me a few days ago or so and said, in the same spirit of how do we help people during this time, perhaps we could temporarily suspend interest on water and wastewater billing. And then it thought about, well, maybe taxes. And so I think we started moving forward thinking the select board would have to approve that for wastewater and water anyways. And then I think Renee and Missy have looked a little closer at what some of the rules are, and realizing that it would be the board of
Statement.
To that would do that. So all select board members are a member of that elected board, but they're the ones who would take this up and consider it. But we certainly can have a brief discussion about thoughts on this anyways.
Oh, personally, I think it's a really good idea, and anything we can think of to lift the burden on those people who are out of work through no fault of their own, not having that paycheck come in. It's scary to think about.
Yeah, I agree with Marilee on that. I think that anything we can do to help people out who are already in a vulnerable situation and minimize the damage I'm in support of that.
Yeah, most certainly. Also, I had a board meeting with Champlain Housing Trust prior to this meeting, and one of the conversations that came up was very similar to this, but looking at, suspending property taxes or interest on overdue property taxes as well, which certainly is more of a, there's more than just local property taxes, and we are required to pay the state education tax. I think the state is currently looking at this to try to figure out how municipalities can allow that to happen, but that is one thing that's going on. And I know the city of Winooski, and this might be something for a future meeting for us as well, or the Board of Statements, but they're also prohibiting any tax sales due to delinquent taxes into and to include all of 2021 so that nobody has their property sold out from under them because they weren't able to keep up with their tax payments. So I certainly definitely want to suspend interest and accrual on wastewater water billing, but also if there are other ways we can, help our neighbors out, that would be great.
Right. So this would also include interest on property tax, that is owed for those,
Right.
I guess, 3 months. And, I can speak not knowing the actual details, but from experience, we don't have a lot of people that don't pay their property tax. I mean, initially it's I'll say kind of a high number, but over time it dwindles down and there's very little, past a year that's owed. And I know it's been discussed for water and wastewater, and I think it's sort of the same thing. There doesn't tend to be a lot of people who don't pay their bills. So it tends to be a small amount, but it may grow a little bit. And if anybody's in that spot trying to dig themselves out of a hole, they're probably in a bigger hole. And I think this is a reasonable thing to do. And Renee, does that sound like a fair way to describe it?
Yes, absolutely.
So just for clarity, the select board alone can't make this decision. We can maybe give voice approval for it, but then this bigger council council of abatement.
Yeah, so it'd be the Board of Abatement, which includes the Select Board, but also the Justices of the Peace, the Town Clerk, and if we had listers, elected listers, then it would include them as well.
So can we as a select board make this as a recommendation to the Board of Abatement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you can show support and you could say as a board that you would support this. But again, it's the governing body would be the Board of Abatement, which you would be part of, but not the entirety.
So would it be appropriate for me to make a motion that we as a select board support this temporarily suspending interest accrual on delinquent taxes and wastewater billing?
Yeah, I think it's certainly okay to make that motion, but I think really to emphasize so there isn't confusion that this is actually putting that plan in motion, that you as a board are supporting that, but there are still other steps that would have to take place.
So the motion really is we would support the Board of Abatement to move forward and have a discussion and consider doing this.
Correct.
Is
Okay,
there
good.
a second for that?
I second.
Well, you made the motion, so you can't second.
Well, I thought you were fixing it for me.
Val, what should we do?
I'll second it.
All right, sounds good. And so I would suspect, I think that Missy is, I expect she will pursue this. And so I expect we'll all get an email and say, when can the board meet as a group, more virtual meeting, I'm guessing. And she'll probably take this up. So we'll get invited to actually discuss and possibly vote on that.
Yeah, I think she's trying to learn a little bit more about this and what they can and can't do. So that's a question that's been happening all over in towns all around. So it's been a discussion on MuniNet. So I think she felt like she really needed to investigate it a little more before she put that in motion.
All right, so the motion and seconded is to support the town pursuing the idea of suspending interest accrual and delinquent taxes and water and wastewater billing. All those in favor of supporting that action, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Thanks. Okay. Got that, Val, I guess?
Got it.
All right, thanks. Next item is approval of the LaPlatte Headwater Town Forest Management Plan So hopefully we've all had a chance to look it over. It's really, it's not a brand new plan. It's been modified. It was described to us, I think Jonathan Treffery and Pat.
Pat Mayer.
described it.
John,
Yeah, I don't
looks
know if
like
you can
John's
hear
with
me.
us.
I don't know if you can hear me, Phil. I just joined your meeting.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi,
Okay.
John.
Hi.
I think you gave us a good description of the changes and the emphasis on the plan this go around. Did any of the board members have any questions or concerns? Any last minute clarifications or encouragement from you, Jonathan?
Well, we created a monitoring plan section that really needs to get populated. So it's an appendix. It's not actually part of the plan. So we need to start to populate that. I guess that's one thing I would add. I think it's the last appendices out of several.
What do you mean by populate it? Put information in it?
Yeah, we really haven't, said anything in there about the deer monitoring plan. If nothing else, we could point to the Indiana bat monitoring that is being conducted, and that shows up in the main body of the plan, because one of our partners, well, one of the reasons we got funding was because of the Indiana bat, and so it's in the main body of the plan, but at least in this appendix, because it's titled, monitoring plans, it could be mentioned there and pointed back to the main document, in case, somebody jumped out to that agenda. But, we're doing invasive species monitoring. We haven't really written that up as a plan, but it seems like we should. So yeah, there's a couple of things that need to go in there. Plus also, I think the intention was that we would have a monitoring process really that we would follow. One of the members of our board, Darren Johnson, is a forester, and he was going to write that up. And so, we need to get that done and add that to that appendix. So yeah, there are things to do. I mean, and that's part of the reason that you have a plan, I guess, is to point out the things that you need to be working on and are focusing on.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or more comments on this?
So I guess my question is then, is this still a draft in progress?
No, I think that, no. So short answer, I would say no.
Okay.
We feel that we needed to do an update to the plan. It was definitely past time that it needed to be updated. And we've made a lot of updates to the important content about what our priorities are to be working on now. And I think that that monitoring section is one of the things that we know we need to be working on, and we are working on. So there are a lot of things in the plan that are works in progress, and I think that's part of what having a management plan is about, to let everyone know what it is you're focusing on, even though those things aren't necessarily all completed.
Great, thank you.
Jonathan, I know to get the funding for these, for this, we're required to have a plan, I think probably through the state that requires a management plan. They're the ones that probably add the real requirement for this. Who else? So we approve it, and do copies go elsewhere besides locally?
Well, we shared it with the management partners, right? And I don't have the plan open in front of me. You folks are a little bit ahead of me on the agenda. I perhaps should have joined a little earlier. But, in the beginning of the plan, it talks about who our management partners are. One of them is Vermont Land Trust. The other is, I think, perhaps Trust for Public Lands. And they, they have to be reviewers of any change that we make to the plan. So, yeah, I think anything that's done on the property has to be run by them.
Mhm.
Unless it's, very simple activities. But in terms of getting funding, the management plan really, it was a requirement as part of the initial funding. But in terms of continued funding, I think if, for instance, the Nature Conservancy is going to be involved, they're certainly going to want to see that we are, well organized and have a plan for how we're managing the property. And in fact, the reason they can go out and get grants is because we have a management plan that speaks to some of the things that they're trying to do. In terms of monitoring, I mean, I guess that's another thing. The Nature Conservancy now has grant funding, and they're doing creating up barriers. If you walk the property, you'd see that there are deer barriers, and they're going to do planting this summer within those barriers. And then I think it's Agency of Natural Resources. I don't know if Pat is online, but she would correct all of these things that I'm saying. But Agency of Natural Resources, or who is it, Pat, that's doing the canary grass, reed canary grass?
U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
So Fish and Wildlife is doing test plots to try to, the reed canary grass is an invasive plant, and it dominates all of the open meadow and wetland area because, the states and the federal government was advising farmers to plant reed canary grass back in the time. And it's so aggressive that that's all that's growing there now. And so Fish and Wildlife is trying to, and that's not the only place in the state where they would like to try to find a way to allow native grasses to come back. But Fish and Wildlife is using a part of the property to do test plots and figure out what's a good way to reintroduce some of the native plants in those areas that have been totally overrun with reed canary grass. So that's another project that's going on there on site at this time. And, so they're getting funding in part because we have a management plan that said we care about trying to bring in the native plants into this environment. And we're trying to recreate the natural riparian corridors around the LaPlatte River, let LaPlatte reclaim its floodplain. So, all of what's in the management plan inspires groups like the Nature Conservancy and Fish and Wildlife to come in and apply for grant money and do these projects.
Okay. So if we wanted to approve this, we'd need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the LaPlatte Headwaters Town Forest Management Plan as presented.
I'll second it.
All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor of approving the plan as presented, say aye. Raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Thanks to the group.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a lot of work here, Jonathan and Pat. And I know I say this whenever the Forest Committee comes up, it's quite an active Forest Committee. And I see some online activities with Ethan Tapper, who is the local town forester, who has the perfect name for a local town forester, I'd say. But it seems almost like every 2 weeks there's some activity for folks in town and surrounding towns. So it really is an active group. It's a great educational group and a great management group of our town town land. So thanks to you and your group, and you know, keep up the good work.
Thank you. We're pretty lucky to have two town forests and a great county forester.
All right.
Yeah, ditto that. Thank you, Phil, and thanks to the board for approving the plan.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Sure.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Pat.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for the great job you're doing.
Thank you
Yep,
both.
you're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is we're moving right along here, which is good. Hopefully not getting ahead of ourselves. It is the,
Oh, Phil, can I stop you for just a
Yes.
second?
Yeah.
Actually, Melissa Levy just joined us, and so she would like to participate and go back to that revolving loan fund discussion a little bit, if we could.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I'm really sorry.
No.
The time seems different. So
Yeah.
I
No.
apologize for being
Meli-
late.
Yeah, Melissa, we started off the meeting just noting that everybody's lives are turned upside down, and the fact that you can even get here tonight and zoom in is, you know, we appreciate the effort, because it is it's everybody's climbing a mountain lately. So we have discussed the revolving loan fund. We discussed two parts of it. I think one is,
Okay.
you know, the fact that we will relieve some of the payment for the two folks that have the revolving fund payment and interest for 3 months, I believe. And then the fact that your group is looking at the rest of the fund and how it might be applied for folks in local businesses or whatever. I guess there's several purposes for it.
I
Go
thought
ahead.
it was going to be just, so originally we were talking about kind of the restaurant, like, you know, the restaurants and cafes as, you know, one possibility. Another is businesses that require like in-person contact, like the hair salon and the nail place and places like that. And I actually got an email today from the stables, and I didn't even think about that. You know, they're paying, you know, for all the upkeep of their horses, but nobody can come. So you know, there's a lot more than I had anticipated. So I think our idea was, you know, can we change a few of the conditions of our existing kind of loans and make them available, you know, with similar terms maybe to the two that we just changed? You know, can we offer some loans to help folks for, you know, a short-term period? I mean, you know, short-term, I don't know, right, how long people will need help. So I think we've loaned 100,000, I think.
Correct.
And I think we should have another 150 that is available. So could we, you know, modify our terms a bit to allow for some of our local businesses to take advantage? So that's kind of what we were talking about our committee. The only, you know, the key with this is that low and moderate income piece, which, you know, I think we can add. I didn't think about this, but we can add this to our application. I think there's a couple of questions maybe we could add to the application to get at that. And, you know, we didn't really discuss terms, but, you know, I think, you know, we're giving our two existing loans 3 months, no principal or interest. Could we do something similar? And then have I don't know, we can maybe even change the rate a little bit for a while. You know, one of our members is a banker, so he, Will Eggleston, he's very helpful. And I guess the bank is doing that too. They're giving their lenders 3 months of no payments. He was saying that that's kind of standard right now. So anyway, I I don't really know what we have to do, but I thought it was time to talk to you guys and see if that would be a possibility to offer that. And what makes sense in terms of the terms.
Well, I'll say that, the board ends up approving these loans, but you guys do all the details, and you have a competent group and a motivated group. So for me, I can say, personally, I would encourage you to look at this and see what opportunities are out there. And if you've got something you're a little bit unsure of, you could certainly run it by us. And
Okay.
yeah, for me, I think it's a great time to use these funds to really, they're there to help our town, and our town maybe could use some help. So that's my thoughts,
Right.
and I'll open it up to any of the
Okay.
other board members.
Yes, so Melissa, I had asked before you were here, would you reach out to small businesses and tell them that this is available, or would you wait and have them contact you?
That's a really good question, because, part of me worries that if we announce it, there will be like a deluge of businesses that need help. But again, that's what that money's for. So, like I said, the Stables are the first folks that actually reached out to me, and that was today. So I think, we were talking about maybe putting a note on Front Porch Forum about it, that, and I would like to, originally I was talking about putting a note on Front Porch Forum and kind of saying that we would look, that the priorities would be like restaurants and like close proximity businesses as kind of like where we would want to target, because I think those businesses are going to feel this the most. But I don't know, I'm open. That's what I was thinking about at first, was just kind of putting it out there with the with the caveat that these are the kinds of businesses that, that might need this help. But I think, if we open it up, we can be prepared to, discuss whatever. The other thing is it's for low and moderate income residents. But the other thing is it's really, the idea is about job retention, right? It's normally job creation and retention. Obviously, right now, we're probably talking about retention. So that's another kind of key piece. So to keep those businesses going and keep them retaining their employees. So yeah, I'm open to suggestions. I don't really have a great idea of how to do this.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Mike had suggested that you probably would put something on Front Porch Forum, and I think it's great you thought about the hair salons, and we also have that little gift shop. I don't know how they can survive.
Yeah, I don't know, right? And yeah, no, it's true. I think they, right, the yoga studio, I know I'm kind of losing it not having that open. So yeah, and the Stables I didn't even think about, but it makes perfect sense. So, I don't want to exclude, especially because I haven't thought through all the possibilities of businesses that will be affected. So, I think, opening it up, we can make the decisions when they come to us, what makes the most sense with that money. I can't imagine there's going to be that many applications that it's going to take all of our funds, but that's a lot of money. 150 at this point, I think, is what we have remaining. So,
Melissa,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we should reach out to the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development just to get some guidance to make sure that we have, what our options are.
I did reach out to them, and they, they pointed me to the fact that it needs to be low and moderate income residents, and that it needs to, I said, well, what about job, because it's job creation retention. And I specifically asked them about this particular scenario that we're in right now, and would it, and that we wanted to see if we could get that money out. And they seemed, open as long as it's low and moderate income is like the key. So I don't think they care about the rates and everything. That's us who creates those terms. But yeah, I think that the key is going to be that low and moderate income piece, which I think we can get at through, the announcement on Front Porch Forum. They sent me the latest table of what that actually means, because I don't know. I think it's up to, I think the moderate income, I think the high part of the moderate income is like 70,000, I think, $70,000. So yeah. Anyway, I can write something up that gets at kind of what we're talking about, and we can see what comes in and take it from there. I mean, I have a feeling that the terms might have to be pretty specialized for each loan, kind of like we've already, even the two that we've already done, they're not the same, right? I mean, the interest rates were the same, but some of the terms were different. So I think any loans that we would give out in this scenario, they would be different based on, timeline, and we don't have any idea, how long this will go. So yeah.
Well, I mean, it is all new territory, so obviously there's not a, cut and paste here. So I'd encourage the committee, if, I appreciate putting in a little bit of work here. And once you sort of have, my suggestion is once you sort of have some boundaries on sort of what it might look like, or,
Yep.
then, you put something out and find out what's out there and see if they sort of match. I think it'd be
Yep.
hard to define what the program is before you know what people want at this case, because it's all
Right.
new territory, like everything else associated with this.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that was what we were hoping, is to put out something on Front Porch Forum and see, if there is need, and then figure out what, how we can best help. I think the application is pretty straightforward. I think we might want to, the application's kind of involved. So as it should be when you're lending out money, but I wonder if there's, another, I don't want to create excessive barriers for people either. Our loan application, it's a real loan application. I mean, you have to have a business plan and all of these different things, which, a lot of our existing businesses may or may not have those things. So I think, to the extent that we can be a little bit flexible, I'd like us to. But yeah, anyway, I'm fine putting something out on Front Porch Forum and maybe reporting back to you guys at the next meeting what I find out, and see where we're at, if that works.
Yeah, I think so. And, work it with your committee. So your committee says, yeah, this is where we're heading. And
yeah, they're all on board.
yeah.
So
I asked that we also put it on the town webpage under the business resources on COVID-19, just so that it's there, not just one day on Front
Yes.
Porch Forum.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. I think that makes good sense.
Thanks.
And I will see what we can do to change. I don't know. I'll talk to, as we're talking to people, we can look at the application with them too and see what makes sense.
All right. Any other questions for Melissa?
No, but thank you, Melissa. This seems really, really important because, a month ago, we really had a wonderful, vibrant town, and it would be
Mhm.
so awful if we lose that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike instigated the conversation, so thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you,
All right.
Melissa.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll get on
Thanks.
it and I'll check back in with you next time.
Thanks,
All
Melissa.
right.
Thanks,
Take care.
Melissa.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Melissa.
Sorry again for being late.
Not a
No
problem.
All right.
All right, next, I'm just checking our time. We seem to be doing okay. Next is reviewing and discussing a draft purchasing policy and procurement policy. There's no expectation we'll take action, but I'll let Renee sort of describe this. And I can say it's come up a little bit with the select board in the past, primarily clarifying, well, how much can Renee spend without select board approval? And it seems like the board is always saying, well, that number should be bigger. You shouldn't have to come to us for that. But without a clear policy, and it's hard to, it would be hard for Renee to move forward. So I think this is an attempt, along with other efforts, to make good policies and clear procedures with the town. So go ahead, Renee, tell us what you're looking at and how you might, how it might look at the end.
Right. And so clarity is one of the reasons, but also even more importantly is just to have a procurement policy in place for the town. So we have a clear set way of how we're going to things and go about a bidding process and all of that. Those are not only good practice, but they're necessary for certain grants and any FEMA. When we have FEMA money that we need to show that we have a procurement policy, or it certainly speaks well for us in receiving any of those funds. So this, what you have in front of you, is based on a draft template that BLCT provided. And I've just adapted it to, the town of Hinesburg and put it more in a uniform way that we're trying to present our policies. And so I've highlighted different sections that, that we're going to need to fill in. And as far as like purchasing authority, there'll be purchasing agents. Those would be, I would, be looking at some of our department heads and people that would be regularly making purchases. And so we'd be listing those people in there. And then there would be different levels of, incidental purchases and minor purchases. And so we need to kind of tie dollar amounts in a range to that. And then at what level it needs to get approval from either the town administrator or the select board. So again, this is just, for you guys to look at it. We've discussed it before, but this is to, we're the first time that this board is really looking at it and to be thinking about it. I'll also be talking with our department heads and to get some feedback from them and looking at some of the other towns' procurement policies.
So when I looked it over, besides, thinking about what goes in those blanks, those fill in the blanks, I thought in that first section there where it says, minor purchases, major purchases, and who can do what, it might be nice to have a little chart in there, even if it's only three rows and a couple of columns. It might be really easy to see almost immediately, so that when the question comes up, can I spend $1,000? You can look at it and say, okay, yep, that's considered a minor or major purchase, and as department manager, Renee has authorized you, so yes, you can. And then that might be easier to read. I think you need it in the text like this, but a little chart, if it can be done, might make it easy to reference.
Okay, that's good.
And Renee, the comments I have on the first page under affirmative action and local preference, I guess I would recommend rewording that so that town funding is one section and federal funding is a different section, because it kind of goes back and forth between affirmative action policy that we want and what the Fed required. And so that might provide some clarity.
Okay. And this is
Probably just moving a sentence.
okay. Yeah. And again, I just took the draft language from the template.
Right, of course.
And we can certainly make those adjustments.
When I read that part of it as well, that the part that stuck out to me was, why would we not ever open purchases up to qualified small minority and women-owned businesses as the Fed's mandate? Like, why would we have them whenever possible and just always have that as an option? I don't know if that's because the limits are access, but it just caused me to question.
Probably left whenever possible so that you don't have to hunt down an entity that doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, I think these are, you know, good policies, and doing what you say, Jeff, I think is good. And I would encourage us to do that, you know, as much as we can. I think as a small town, we might be limited to find, you know, somebody who's gonna provide you know, plow blades, and to meet those requirements. And you know, I've also been on the business side of things, and I've seen companies sort of on the other side where they have, it's woman owned, but it's not really. But they do that to, you know, meet all this. So it sort of goes both ways. But I'm with you, Jeff. I mean, whenever possible, we should be trying to do that. And I think we try, but the policy should define it at least the way it does here. And if not, you know, make it a strong statement.
Anything else that anyone has seen or has other feedback?
What would be the next step? So are you going to come back maybe with some proposed fill in the blanks?
Yes, I think for the next meeting, because I
Okay.
like to get this finalized so we have it in place.
And I think, you know, when it's come up before to the select board, I was trying to think something for the town road crew needed to buy some emergency thing. I forget what it was, but it wasn't cheap, you know, and it wasn't necessarily budgeted, but it was something we needed. And I forget exactly how much it was.
It was 5,000.
5,000, yeah.
Yes.
And you know, you brought it to us, and we were like, geez, seems like you should be able to buy this. I mean, it's an obvious thing we needed. It wasn't a question or a, you know, we can do this or do that. No, we pretty much had to do it. So I'd encourage you to, what you feel comfortable with. I would trust your opinion, and present that to us, and we'll consider, you know, your recommendation, and decide from there.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
The next item is, this is another annual item, and this is to approving the draft audit and letter associated with our annual audit. So we have a copy of that in our, and I was, Missy's not going to be here for this, right?
No, she's not. But Missy and Joan were both participated in this and reviewed it with the auditors. And so this is just a formality that the board has a signature to. So I would sign it, Missy signs it, and then you as the select board chair, Bill, would probably be the one to sign it. Or some representative.
I won't say I read each and every line and put a lot of thought in it, but it seemed pretty straightforward, and I trust the eyes that are looking at it, and our auditing firm, you know, are working well.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Well, I was just gonna, I'll let you talk, Mike.
I was just going to say I didn't see anything that would cause concern.
I was gonna go for the motion.
Go for it.
I make a motion to approve the FY19 draft audit and management letter for Fothergill, Segale, and Valley.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the formal letter on the audit, say aye and raise your hand. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All set with that, Val, I assume?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So next item is town administrator report. You've been doing anything interesting, Renee?
And
I have
Phil-
not.
I have a note in here that we said at the beginning, and maybe you're all ready to do this, Renee, that we talk
Oh.
about essential town offices and work that must be
Oh,
done.
yes, right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's right.
Do you want to talk to this, Renee, or would you like me to?
Sure.
You can.
I can talk. So, you know, as you know, every department has had to, I think we use the term, everything's turned upside down since all of this has happened. And so every role that we've had to completely rethink how to do it. We have almost the entire town hall staff working remotely now, especially after the governor's stay-at-home, stay-safe order came into play. There have been, I continue to get questions from the planning and zoning office. They're really trying to think how they can meet the needs of the people that they serve and the residents that they serve, their applicants, by completely staying at home. And so they were just trying to find, you know, within the governor's order, what language specifically fit them. And does it mean that they can't actually go out and either go to properties and do a certificate of occupancy and checking to make sure it's all the things have been done, or putting up a zoning notice at the end of someone's driveway, or going into town hall to check on files and things like that. So they were just really trying to get some clarity regarding if they can continue those things. And then in addition to that, with the DRB, the applications that they have in front of them, how to continue moving those forward as well, which, would require some extra steps outside of not just at their home. So I think they really wanted, the board to think about this, to discuss it. I did say my interpretation of the governor's order is that any non-essential services, and if they can't happen remotely, should cease. So, but the essential services that were identified were, like our police, our fire, our water, wastewater, a highway, in order to keep the roads passable and safe. And then a financial piece in order to just keep the function going as far as paying our debts and, paying our staff. But beyond that, my understanding is everyone else should be either working at home or ceasing, their role at this time.
Didn't Al give us that long list of businesses that could be in business and those that couldn't? And I read through that, the nice colors of the yes and the no, and construction was a no.
So I included that in here. Several,
Yeah,
is this one you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically new construction.
Oh, Al's still there.
Thank you, Al.
Right,
I-
we
that
were
was-
raised for 16 health are still allowed.
Yeah.
And also the construction piece is only construction for the COVID-19 response, is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I'm not sure what today's guidance is. but,
Right.
Yeah, it was basically new construction. If it was repairs or, you know, necessary to keep ongoing, that you could do that.
I'll weigh in here, and you know, I may have said this at our last meeting, and if not, I've said it several times, particularly around work and other organizations that I'm in. Probably 6 weeks ago, the mantra was, if it feels you're overreacting, you're probably where you need to be. And so while some people might think this is overreacting, I would weigh on, no, it's not, to shut down some of those activities or minimize them by staying, you know, out of the building and away from any contact with people, particularly in the next 4 to 6 weeks, at least. I would say, you know, my recommendation, strong recommendation for the planning and zoning would be that they do as much work as possible remotely if there is an absolute reason for a essential business, and they need to come to the office to look at files or do something, then that upstairs place where they do work, there should only be one and only one person going forward that would go there. You don't even need to clean it. You know, with some procedures of how you written down exactly how you go in and go out. So, and only if necessary. And I would think all the other activities associated with building permits and things like that can certainly probably be put on hold. I mean, I don't imagine there's an emergency there. So I would weigh more on the, if it feels like you're overreacting, you're doing the right thing. And I mentioned to Renee, my company, we shut down. We just shut down. We shut the doors. That's it. So we're out of business for a while, but we're doing it because it's the right thing to do for people.
Right. And I'll also point out, when it comes to real estate, that is considered non-essential. So as far as any research in the town office, that sort of thing, we do not have to provide access to forms and files at this point for a non-essential service, from my understanding.
My only question about the construction piece is, if somebody has to do a repair and it would require a permit, can we set up some way that they could be authorized to do the work without having an interaction physically with the zoning and planning? Could that be something that's done via conference call and a permit is mailed to them? I'm wondering, you know, someone just to keep people in compliance. It may never happen, but I'm just thinking, if someone says, I have to do this to maintain the safety of my home, I've got to have this repair made, and our zoning laws require a permit.
Yep, I think like our wastewater folks, if the water shut off at somebody's house and they needed to go and, you know, work on the valve there, I'm assuming that's essential work and they'd have to do that. But any new hookups that aren't necessary, they're just putting those off. So I think you're right, Jeff. And I'd be looking for Alex, I think, would be the one to sort of say, here's what we're saying is essential, and here is how we're going to do it, or here's how we're going to work around it.
Right.
And I'm sure we'd be flexible with that.
Yeah, and it does say repairs for safety and health are allowed. Of course.
The other thing, the assessor from NIMRIC, she does, when she comes in, she has to come in to do her work regarding, you know, property taxes and getting things set for the values of homes and businesses. So she's asking, is it going to be okay for her to continue to come in? She's been coming in, I think, between 5 and 7 in the morning when no one else is there. And so she was also looking for guidance on that.
Again, I would say if we can put that off for 4 or 6 weeks,
Right.
we should put it off. If Missy and yourself feel like it can't be, and it seems like it could be,
Right.
then where's the written procedure on how somebody comes into the building for those 2 hours? What's the cleaning process in between? Does she have her own workspace? And why can't she do it at home? I assume it's to look at the records, but
Right.
so I would say we put it off like everybody else has been put off. And, I don't think anybody's paying their property taxes in the next 6 weeks.
So
So,
that's been my message. I just wanted to make sure that that you're in agreement, that I feel like that we are, sort of the model of this community, and where, the governor's order puts many businesses, like you just stated, Phil, out of business right now, or having to completely shut down because they're not deemed essential services or critical to the response for the COVID-19. And so I think, as I looked at our services and what we provide, again, I think it's the fire, the police, the water, wastewater, and highway in order to keep the roads passable. But everything else beyond that, I think we can all be working remotely to do, the basic needs that we need to meet.
I agree.
is there any particular action that we can take tonight, or do you need some help or support, Renee, on that from us? Or
I can talk to the planning and zoning office, let them know that, that's, you sort of support that the same message. And if there's anything else that comes back, I'll let you know.
okay,
I
up, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah.
Up.
You're muted again.
Oh, God, what am I, sorry about that. It's been really stressful for Renee to continue to be balanced and explain this. And I appreciate all your response and support of keeping people, not just planning and zoning, them as well, but everybody safe. And this is just one more way we can do it. So thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Joy. The fact is, there's a lot of people that work for the town or volunteer for the town that are put in harm's way right now. Like you say, the road crews, they've got to come in and keep roads going, and the water, wastewater, they got to do as a minimum, their testing and keep things fixed. We've had a couple of water breaks. We had one there by Brian Bougier's a couple of weeks ago, and there may be more. So, they've all got to be saying they're put in harm's way, and hopefully they've got, as Al does, procedures to minimize exposure for them and their families and anybody else in the public. But if we don't have to do that, you just put things on hold, and I'm not picking on the assessor, but you know what? It's work you're going to have to catch up on, sometime from now. But until then, we're trying to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and
Yes, you
what
can
I
save
reiterated to all the staff is all of their roles are very valued and very important. So by saying that they're non-essential services for the COVID-19 response is not a reflection on the value that we place on the work
Right.
that they do.
Okay, so it seems pretty unanimous that the board is backing you up, Renee, in what might appear to be overreaction, but again, I would say again that if it appears you're overreacting, you're where you should be. I think 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, if we looked at where we are today, we said that's where we're going, we would have considered it overreaction. If we said we're going to close all the schools and nobody's, they're not coming back, that would be something we didn't think of 2 months ago.
Right, and if you need any statistics to back you up, I've been watching the numbers climb, and every day it's a lot more people in Chittenden County, and at least one of those people is from Hinesburg.
And I think much like the post that I put on, it is so important for all of us to do our part right now, because the sooner that we can do our part and stay at home and do the appropriate social distancing when we do have to go out for essential needs, like getting groceries or supplies, the sooner that we can all do that, the sooner we can get through this, and that we can get our businesses back in operation, and we can get our residents back employed again, and we can keep people safe, and we can save lives. This is a really important time.
Right.
Okay, great. Next item is thanks for bringing that up, Marilee. I kind of forgot that item there. Town administrator report. You gave us some highlights, I think, but what else? If there are any questions for Renee or items you want to focus on, let us know.
I think just a lot of, communication with people. There's, people that are really having a lot of concerns right now. And so there's been a lot of reaching out, and people, sending me emails or calling other people. I think it's just a general sense of this uncertainty. But at the same time, I really would like to highlight the wonderful things that, we've seen, and the best part of humanity that's come out on Front Porch Forum with, we had, you see every day, there's some new kind posts that are made, and there's people that are offering to, I think someone put out that they needed their garbage and recycling CSWD. And then the next day they posted, not only did, wonderful volunteers move forward, the person that actually did it wouldn't accept payment. And not only did they bring the trash and recycling, but they came back and delivered toilet paper because apparently they were out. And so, and there's people that are doing things just to, thinking really creatively, and stones or painted rocks that were on Buck Hill Road, I believe. And someone on Mechanicsville Road that put a thank you sign out for essential services. There's just all kinds of kindness. Someone on McGee Hill Road that started a sourdough starter and is now sharing it, around. And there's just a lot of goodwill and a lot of good things happening. And I think connections are starting to happen more than they were before. People are really going out of their way to reach out to people, and maybe people that they hadn't communicated with. So that's the wonderful thing that's going on, amidst all of the news and the media and the reality that's also happening around us. There are some bright spots.
Absolutely. Thanks for reminding us of that. That's absolutely true. And it is nice to see those things. It's really uplifting and kind of validating of the best in humanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
As people continue to say, we're all in this together.
Absolutely.
A question on the Village North sidewalk. So we're still, well, now it's probably on hold, and that's okay. To finalize turning that sidewalk over, there's still probably a task list or a checklist to finish.
Yeah. So really, the work of the sidewalk is done outside of what needs to happen in the spring, for them to come back and do some touch-up work and things like that. So the work is done. It's just a matter of there's differences between what the state is saying that they need now versus what the construction inspection engineer is used to and is what they typically have on projects. So there's been a lot of back and forth that's happening. I think they're getting close to resolving this so that we can finally direct the final payment to Parker, who did the work. So we're getting closer, but it's amazing how long this
Yes.
gone on, and just when I think I finally got this to the finish line, there's always seems to be a little bit of a speed bump. But the good news is we have a sidewalk there, people can enjoy it.
Mhm.
You know, it is now hours all but just doing this final step.
I did have somebody approach me saying, how come the telephone pole pieces are still in the field there? I don't, that obviously isn't the town's responsibility, but I would
Right.
think it's probably on their checklist that, you know, they need to finish that, whether it's the telephone company or NRG or the contractor, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is the poles are owned by the electric company. So all the utilities have their lines on those poles. I think when they did that and they had to switch things out, it was a little late in the season. So I suspect they're waiting until after the spring, you know, gets the roads or the ground
They
is
can
getting
drive out
better,
there.
dried
Yeah.
out. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Renee?
Yeah, Renee, I'm wondering, and not to put things on your plate, but I'm wondering if we're starting to look at any sort of financial modeling for possible lost revenues for the town budget. What that might look like, kind of worst case scenario stuff.
Yeah, you know, I think it depends on how long this goes on, but we're likely to see a definite loss in revenue from, you know, property taxes from folks that aren't able to, you know, pay their property taxes this year, or certainly not on time. And, you know, probably within the enterprise fund as well with the water and wastewater. So I fully anticipate we're going to be having to think about that. We've got a lot of towns around us are in the same boat. There's towns
Right.
that have the local options tax that you know, was a significant generation of revenue, and now all of those businesses that were those sources are closed or shut down. So this is a conversation that's happening everywhere, and we can definitely see the writing on the wall that this is going to be a challenging time ahead of us.
So do you have any access to possible models you could use, or if VCLT or anybody's kind of saying, you know, here's how to run a modeling on, you know, 10% lost revenue, 20% lost revenue, so we could maybe get ahead of that?
Yeah, we certainly look at that. They're also looking at different, you know, types of resources for municipalities too, that are going to be experiencing these financial losses.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
great.
not sure. You know, I'm not sure they're. To me, they're not really lost revenue. I mean, we are going to assess taxes and water bills, and we can't not do that because
Right,
that's
but if
what we voted on. So I would think if, you know, the amount of if we have a higher number of taxes that are unpaid or water bills begin to be unpaid, I would think that the relief we would look for would be from the state and provide some funds to those folks who are unable to meet those. I'm not sure, you know, I suppose if it really went bad, then the town would need to start making cuts.
Right.
Right. So I guess I'm
services.
just wondering, again, working with some other very large organizations that are working through these modeling now, knowing there's going to be a lost revenue. I agree it's not lost revenue, but if it's uncollectible revenue,
Yeah.
getting a sense of what's available.
Right.
And the only other question I had, and this is my ignorance of knowing the town's budget and so forth, is do we have any, you know, recognizing that we might see uncollectible revenue, do we have any loans, large loans that we have out, that sort of thing, where we can seek, you know, seek our own, like, no payment for 3 months? that I know, again, a lot of other organizations are doing right now, and banks are very cooperative.
Like I said, there are certainly that they are looking into options for municipalities to, sort of have these bridge loans to help until we are able to recapture that revenue.
So we do have leases, on vehicles and trucks that are out there that potentially could be given a 3-month, forgiveness. I suppose that's a possibility, Mike. And then, we have 3 bond loans, I think, out there now for the police station, the highway garage, and the solar trackers.
Right.
And I don't know, Renee and VLCT would be the ones knowing, our towns and cities starting to think about that and starting to poke some of these the holders of the loans, the leases for us, primarily leases, and then these bonds, and whether, a bond holder would say, well, you don't have to pay for 3 months. And maybe you extend the lease or the terms. I know they're doing that for mortgages. It'd be interesting,
Right.
because we'd have to go to the taxpayers to get them to approve, I think. So it's interesting. It's and if things get better in 6 weeks, we might ride this out. But that's not everybody's saying that's what's going to happen. That this, we might be feeling this for years.
And Mike, I apologize. I misunderstood your question. So now I see what you were asking.
Okay, great. And so, I guess I'm kind of wondering, what some of our options might be available. I do know other municipalities and large organizations are seeking this type of relief at this point, mostly so they can keep cash on hand, and then others for cash not coming in. So I guess I would recommend the sooner we know what might be available to us, the better.
And again, some of those communities, they have their property taxes at different times. And so it's not just a once a year. And so, their next payment is due shortly. And so those are those are the next ones are the ones they're concerned about. We, our taxes were already generated for our current fiscal year. It'll be July 1, we'll be moving into that next one, which is where it's more concerning.
So that's probably a question, Mike. Good questions that,
Yes,
we could also ask Missy to be looking, ask her cash flow wise, when do we start to get squeezed? And, when taxes are due next November, at what point of the right term being unpayments, I guess, what percentage would become a cash flow problem, and when would that show up?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Phil.
Okay.
And
Anything
Renee,
else?
I apologize for adding more to your plate, but
Oh, no. Those are good questions, Mike.
Mike, we're going to take up a collection after this meeting, so just I have to say, I'm involved with the United Church of Hinesburg, and it's been around for a long time, 100 years or more, 100 years. And so it's a little more sophisticated now than it was. But my understanding is like 50 years ago, the finance committee would get together, and there were some local people who have since passed, but I sort of knew who they were. And they would get together, and they were the finance committee, and it'd be the end of the year, and they'd say, well, we're $4,000 short. And they would just, oh, who's got, and they would just come up with the money. So fortunately, the select board doesn't have to do that at the end of the year. I don't think, not yet. Select board forum, does anybody have anything they want to bring up or concerns or thoughts?
I had said to Renee that I would like to put on Front Porch Forum what we used to do before, kind of a recap of the select board meeting, just to keep people informed so that they feel like they know a little bit about what we're doing. Rather than recap, I think I'd like to call it highlights, because there are some things that I might not feel like needed to be mentioned.
Mhm. Is that something you're willing to sort of draft up, Marilee? And
Yes, I would love to draft
yeah.
it up, and then what would I do? Send it to you and Renee before I sent it to Front Porch Forum, submitted it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would want to review it, and
Yeah.
I guess it's up to the board, but I think Renee and myself, just looking at it, keeping it simple, keeping it as an announcement, because I think there are some good things, that we could say, or informative things that we could say, that what's being done. I mean, if you mention, hey, I'm not sure, do you mention we're looking at not, suspending interest and payments on delinquent taxes and water and wastewater? That might be getting out in front of our skis, and
Yeah,
because it hasn't been approved yet. So,
and the same with the revolving loan fund.
right,
Mm-hmm.
right. But there may be other things, that would be good to put out there that, certainly staying close to Al and his team. I think it's encouraging that would be some type of announcement on Front Porch Forum, so people know, they hear on the news that there's, people are running out of masks and things. And I think it'd be good to say right now, our emergency response crew has, appropriate procedures, and right now they're stocked to take care of what they need to take care of. So
Yep.
those things.
Yep, and I thought also just mentioning that we approved the LaPlatte Headwaters Town Forest Management Plan, and the local, updating the local emergency management plan.
Sure.
And I don't really see anything else that would be valuable. But I'm happy to hear if people do have ideas.
No, but so I'd encourage you, if you want to draft something up.
Yep.
What's the other board members, Mike and Jeff? Are you okay with basic, simple announcement of things that happened at the select board?
Yeah, I'm okay with the process you laid out.
I think it's fine, and ultimately they can follow up and see the minutes, because those are all public too. So
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And VCAM too. So
Yeah, it's just that people read Front Porch Forum. I'm one of them, every time it comes out. But
Yeah.
not so likely to go to the town website and read all the minutes.
Yeah, and I do think it's really important that they see in Front Page Forum that the board is meeting, and Renee and Al are, moving through emergency responses, all those sort of things,
Right,
and see that, work's being accomplished
exactly.
just remotely.
yeah, it could be reassuring.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I had a couple items. One is just to remind the select board members, I mentioned some projects that, if one of us wants to champion, I think Marilee said she would work on the ambulance procurement, and I said I would work on the water, wastewater, and I think I'll also work on the water side of it too. Obviously, these things are kind of in limbo, kind of on hold right now, but at some point we'll be moving forward. So if there's anything there that you're of interest, I think Jeff French mentioned maybe looking at some of our IT stuff too. So that can all be helpful in a way to get involved. The other thing is, I did have a brief discussion with Chuck Reese. They wanted to push this solar initiative. and they had a deadline of July 1st. And I basically suggested it's going to be hard to move forward to that deadline. I think I said that at the last meeting. And one, it was an aggressive deadline during normal times. And I think this sort of initiative requires a lot of communication with everybody in town and the town itself, the folks in the town, since it's town properties. It's possible I would expect the PUC, public, the Public Service Board, folks who are in charge of this permitting, they have this deadline for July 1st. We suspect that they'll probably push that out, so that hopefully that deadline will be not a hard deadline. We'll have to see. So they're, going to take that under advisement, and I'm sure they'd like to move forward, but while we're doing remote meetings, it's going to be hard to have a public meeting on that and get all the input, in my opinion, and that's what I advise them. They can certainly do what they want to do. Any other select board members have anything else they want to add? You don't have to. So the next item is review the minutes from 3/18, which was our first meeting. This is our second official meeting, but Jeff and Mike, it seems like I feel pretty comfortable and appreciate you guys here as part of the team. So
Thank you. Hopefully
thanks, Phil.
soon we'll all be able to get together.
right. It's and I'm not saying it because, well, you guys haven't got me a gift yet. I'm sure it's in the mail, but it's my birthday tomorrow. And I've been known on my birthday to bring something to the select board meeting. So in lieu of that, I will be eating each and every one of your piece of cake. And I'll think of you when I do that.
Is that stress eating, Phil?
Yeah, right,
Virtual cake delivered remotely, right?
right.
Phil, I wanted to just make a note with the minutes. Some of the names might not be absolutely correct for seconding motions. If I didn't see you in the little picture that I'm not recognizing voices 100%. So if names are incorrect, I apologize.
Okay. So Marilee, do you want to make a motion on the minutes?
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the minutes for the March 18th, 2020 meeting with, what do you call it?
Any corrections?
Any
noted?
corrections? Yes, thank you.
All
I
right.
would second that motion.
All right. And so I see a couple of things. I'll bring those up. In the Val, in the organizational meeting, that first sentence on the top, or the second one, Marilee nominated, this is the first page, sorry, Marilee nominated, moved that the, I guess, vote could come out, the board elect.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah. And then in that same little section at the end, it said seconded by Jeff, but it didn't say who. I think that was Jeff French, I think, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
And I appreciate the fact that you did put last initials under all the Jeffs, so that's helpful. That's all I had.
So I wanted to suggest an addition at the bottom of the first page, when it was about posting things on Front Porch Forum, Renee noted sometimes information comes in late and is included in the board's packet, but not noted on Front Porch Forum. She noted the open meeting law requirements are being met. If you do not see the information about a meeting, Renee asked you reach out to her. And Phil did note that the agendas are, with few exceptions, posted by Renee on Front Porch Forum 48 hours before the meeting. I think it's important to have that in the minutes because that's just the reality.
Okay.
Okay, I'm all right with that. I do remember saying that. Any other comments?
I didn't find anything to correct.
Jeez.
Good job, Val.
Yeah.
Oh, bad job, Merrily.
Oh, good job, Val.
Yeah. All right. So with that, all those in favor of approving the minutes with those slight modifications, raise your hand and say aye.
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 So that's
Aye.
unanimous. Thank you. And next would be a motion to approve the warrants, including payroll. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right.
Mike Loner.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So as part of our new procedures, I went to the town office to approve the warrants, and they were in a completely different room. And I put my gloves on, and I brought my own pen. So, I think that's what we're doing. And I'd be open to any suggestions on how to even do it better. I think it's okay, but we'll do the minimum we have to do, I guess. So there were no special issues, I think, with those. Marilee, you didn't see anything special.
Nope, but I forgot to bring my own pen, so I had to own the
Hey.
pen that I used.
Yeah, you can bring it back next time.
No, I can't. Oh, yes, if I'm the only one who uses it. Yep, that's true.
All right, so all those in favor of approving the warrants, including payroll, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All right. And there's no need to go to executive session, right, Renee? Nothing
Correct.
this week. We would have mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting if there was anyways. So I think with that, again, thank you all for participating. We need to get the town business done, support Renee and the town folks. And I think for a little while, we probably won't take on any new things that we don't have to do, just exactly what's happening everywhere else. But Renee will certainly steer us to things that we must get done, and and any support that we can provide to let us know.
Right, and I just want to thank you, Renee, and also Joy for the heavy load that you're carrying. Seems like it's just increased with everything being online.
Yeah, I think we're all finding that, working remotely does have its challenges, and just that loss of connection with people and being able to see people face to face is hard for all of us. But it takes more steps to be able to do things, because you can't just run downstairs and talk to someone or give them something. So I think everybody, whatever business they're doing or whatever their role is, we're all in some big changes right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, I've thought of you a number of times, you and your cohorts that are trying to do instruction, and my wife too, from afar. It's got to be quite a challenge.
It's definitely not without its issues, but we're all learning, and every Monday we have a 170 person faculty meeting on Google Hangout. And so, our big thing right now is it's less about the academics and maintaining connections with kids is the focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's working as best as it can to do a year's worth of professional development in 2 days. So we'll get through.
Okay, good. Well, and so I know some of you, have kids at home, and many people do, and they still have to get their job done. I also have someone at home, and this guy George does get in my business, as you know. He's always wondering what I what I do. In fact, I'd call him very curious. So
Wow.
he's always hanging out there. All right. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. And a second?
Second, Mike
Thanks.
Loner.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. All right. Again, everybody stay safe. And if you need anything, let us know, I guess. We can support each other. And same with you, Renee, and Joy and your team. So thanks a lot. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Renee, I'm not sure how the recording works, but I'll
I think-
stop recording, and I
yeah,
think it's a
just-
file, and I'll forward you the file.
Great. It'll be emailed to you shortly.
Okay, great.
right.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.